So much media, so little time. Who keeps track of it all? That would be me. This is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview, broadcast and recorded live on blogtalkradio.com from the new media and American League baseball capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. I don't care if you never before heard of my guest, Sarah Szalavitz. A week ago, frankly, neither had I. But I suspect that at the end of this hour, we'll all want to hear more from Sarah. Or maybe we'll just want to be Sarah. Sarah is the co-founder of 7 Robot, a new company involved in digital storytelling and social design. More about that later, because that's just her latest career. A Harvard-trained lawyer, that credential is almost incidental in a resume that includes 2 years as assistant to then Speaker of the California State Assembly, Willie Brown, Jr. More recently, she was Director of Content Development for VO Networks. So we've got a lot of ground to cover and lessons to divine from the Szalavitz. And as always, your contributions to the show are welcome by phone, 1-646-595-3135, or via web chat. Sarah, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you.
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
I'm good. Of course, I'm not the one who just got all that build-up, so I got nothing to live up to.
Yeah, that is quite a lot of build-up to live up to. A few weeks ago, I was at a conference called the Entertainment Gathering, and they had Joshua Bell play a song. There was a guy that was had directed a documentary about Bach and had a lot of musicians play different songs. And so Joshua Bell was there to play a song, and he described it, and I don't remember what it was because I don't know that much about classical music, actually. But he said, this is a lot of pressure because the song that I'm about to play for you, the idea is that I play it correctly, you'll all understand the truth. And so that's about how I feel about now.
Wow.
It's a lot of build-up, but yeah. It was beautiful. It made me cry.
Just relax. We're all friends here. We'll treat you kindly. I suspect you won't have any trouble with anything we throw at you here.
I think I'll be able to handle it. I hope.
I think so too. Now, after all that build-up, we talked about storytelling. I actually want to start by talking to you about a different kind of storytelling, and that's politics. Specifically, the relationship between Barack Obama and social media. It's something very new this past year, isn't it?
It sure is. I mean, it's really been a fascinating thing to just even watch. A candidate's never had these tools available, but also no candidate has tried to take advantage of these kinds of tools. And so, it's really fascinating just even to watch in his first days in office. There was a quote today in the Washington Post about, and I'm not going to remember who said it, but he basically said, it's like going from Xbox to Atari. All of the software is ancient and outdated, the computers don't work, and the phone lines are messed up. And so it's this group of people that's used to really communicating. It's also sort of like thinking about all of the press coverage of Obama's desire to keep his BlackBerry. And like you kind of think about it and you're like, well, you don't want him to have something that's accessible, of course, but can you really imagine that we should have a president that doesn't communicate like that?
Yeah, well, you say that, but we just had a president like that, and the guy who ran against Obama couldn't find the internet with a guide. So we could actually have been in that position, couldn't we?
I think that that's absolutely true that we could have been in that position, and but nonetheless, it just seems really, pretty much incomprehensible to me. Just because, we're in a day that there are so many things possible. And I actually would just say that Obama's the first person to take advantage of social media. I think I wrote something about this this week actually. I think, what Obama has done with social media suggests that there are also other kinds of fundamental changes that can happen. The political parties aren't as relevant as they were. Obama's definitely a Democrat and definitely a product of that kind of machine. But nonetheless, things are changing. The way that you can organize people because of the internet, because of Facebook or Twitter or anything you might be using is, approaching zero. I put together actually just before the inauguration, there was a contest that Change.org was having for the best idea in America. And so I put together actually a project on forgiving student loans, just kind of for the heck of it. And we came in 12th. We didn't win, sadly, but we'll keep going. Nonetheless, like those sort of things, like that kind of me being able to organize people in that kind of immediate way never happened before. And the Democratic and Republican parties have not really taken advantage of it. I mean, if you even just look at their websites, it's pretty clear that they're not that focused on that. So, the parties have to change because, Facebook is here. It's not going to change. That's not going anywhere.
Is it possible that the next presidential election will not produce a candidate that is not reliant on social media?
It's a really interesting question because I think like the next 4 years are really like telling years. Like obviously like Congress has just gotten onto YouTube with all of their channels, which is really cool and a really great step forward. I think it really depends on what happens with the economy. Because I think like a lot of cable viewership is really, dependent on people being able to afford cable bills. I think people are more likely to get rid of cable than they are to get rid of the internet. Which certainly changes the dynamics of how you campaign. I think you have to move in that direction. I also think that this is something else I wrote about in this piece. There's another sort of thing at play. It's that like when people register to vote now because of Motor Voter, they register to vote one time. And now most people don't register in parties. They register as declined to state, which has really big problems for like elections and political parties and like the legitimacy of public funding and that kind of thing if people actually aren't members of these parties. And it leaves a big space for someone, who's smart and can use the internet wisely to organize, a really compelling, other set of parties.
Now I'm gonna ask something out of ignorance. Is Motor Voter national or is that in California? No,
that's national. It was a Clinton initiative. It was passed in 1993, and there was a lot of sort of challenges with it. I think like what happened is that the people the members of Congress that were passing it, I don't think that they bought that people would register as declined to state. I don't know if it even occurred to them when they passed the law. I think that, like, for whatever reason, be it arrogance or ignorance, in 1993, that's not what they were concerned about. I think they were more concerned that, too many Democrats were going to be able to register to vote. Well, that's not what happened, and that's not like what trends show, like what trends show for the future. And it's a really serious, like, constitutional question.
There's been a lot of talk about how Obama and the Democrats raised a lot of money from small individual contributors, and there was a lot of emphasis on that. But that wasn't, the real impact of social media on this election is way beyond the contributions, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think the contributions, excuse me, are really amazing. It's impressive to see what he could inspire in people and really what he accomplished. It's really, still, it kind of brings tears to my eyes that we could accomplish this as a people. But nonetheless, I think that the impact is far larger. I think that he communicated with a different generation of voters by being conscious of what was, of Twitter, of Facebook, of any of the sort of different platforms that he participated on, and YouTube, of course. So it's sort of like, he took advantage of tools that didn't cost very much. And the other thing is that he took advantage of allowing people to build those kinds of communities online. Like with my Barack Obama, he allowed people to express not just him, but themselves, even in his messaging, which I think is also, frankly, revolutionary. And it's incredible that he's having, from this dire moment that we're in, this opportunity to really reset the way that we think about things. Because I think it is sort of revolutionary to think about us as a unified people instead of through a lens of partisan bickering. And if he can pull it off, it really, it's a complete change in American history. But I think that's possible I think that's possible through organizing online, and I think it also sort of really does create questions about the legitimacy of a two-party system. Well,
where do I want to go with that? I've got two directions I want to ask you a question. Let's go with the two-party system question, though. Could social media lead to a legitimate third political party, one that has genuine clout?
Well, I think that, like, the Republican Party, like, as a national party, has some serious trouble after the last election. Just straightforwardly, as competing as a national party, like, with a message that appeals to a 40% of the people, 30% of the people, let's even say. I mean, I think it's I think it really, and I don't think that, I think that is actually, Obama aside, is a serious challenge. Their electorate is seriously aging. They're not who you're reaching on Facebook, that's for sure. But, things have changed and people aren't registering in parties. So it's. I think that not only could there be a third party, but there could be a party that overtakes, another one of the parties. It's a challenging question because, like, the Constitution does support a two-party system, but the way that the two-party system was envisioned was that, like, was obviously far before the cost of organizing was so low. You couldn't legitimately think that someone could organize a party with greater membership than the Democratic or Republican Party 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Without a great amount of cost. And frankly, you could probably do it in like a couple days on Facebook without it costing you anything.
Well, now, Sarah, can I ask, how old are you?
Me? Yeah. I'm 34. I'm sorry. That's like, women are never accustomed to being asked their age. They're like, me? How old am I? I'm 34.
Well, when you talk about, 10 years ago, something like that couldn't have been possible. It's funny because earlier today I was talking to somebody about the election in 1980. And that was the first time I voted for president, and I voted for that was for those of you who may be too young to recall, that was Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. Yeah, Jimmy Carter. Mm-hmm. But there was a third candidate, a serious candidate in that, John Anderson, who ran as an independent, and I was in college then, and he got. Sarah, are you still with us?
I am.
I'm sorry. Speaking of technology, Skype cut me off. Anyway, I was saying that John Anderson got college students all across the country very excited about the possibility of a legitimate third party candidate, and got a lot of votes. I think he actually got about 10% of the votes that year. And then several years later, I want to say it was 92. Ross Perot, and then again in 96, but he wasn't really as much of an impact then. So what I'm saying is there have been periods in recent history where a portion of the electorate, usually young people, have gotten excited about an alternative to the status quo, and then it just didn't quite work out. What do you think would be so different 4 years hence, 3.5 years hence, the way these things run, about a possible legitimate third candidate party?
Well, I think that it's not even just a third. It's not a third candidate. That's not actually what I'm talking about. Although I think a third candidate is possible, but it's challenging for the Electoral College for that reason, like to actually get elected. It's very tough. Mm-hmm. But what I'm sort of saying is actually a party that could compete on a national and state level with the Democratic Party. Mm. And I think, because I just think that, like, there are a lot of people. Or with the Republican, with the Republican Party more specifically, because I just think that they don't have enough voters anymore. Their voters are dying out. They have a very specific block of voters, and if they have 30%, that leaves room for someone else.
I'm not a Republican by any means, but I would kind of caution about thinking too much that they're out and down and out, because it wouldn't take much for the Republicans to find people who can do with social media what the Democrats did, what the Obama people did. I mean, it's not beyond.
I don't think that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't think Republicans can't do it. I think that their message is outdated.
I'm not so sure about that. If they had picked different candidates this past year, the election could have wound up quite different. I mean, there were people who would have, who probably were right on the line between, voting for Obama and, maybe if there was a Republican who was a little more moderate and not, not as inexperienced as Palin or as non-digital as McCain, that, it might have wound up very differently.
I definitely don't disagree with that, but I also think this was a fairly dynamic kind of defeat, and I think that things have and are changing. I mean, you may be right, and I may be blinded by my own liberalism, entirely possible, but I just think that things have changed and are going to continue to. And I think that, like, knowing that the crash happened, under George Bush, and George Bush socialized the banks, and there's a lot of sort of legacy things that are that we are going to continue to be responsible for. I think things have changed, and I think also in terms of like the way that the Republican policy on climate and energy has also is also outdated.
We have a comment from the web chat who says that the Republican Party went too far central in this election, which I find interesting. I would have said maybe the other way, but
I don't disagree, because I think if they'd gone super right wing, like if they'd gotten someone that was super Christian, they could have probably pulled something off.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can get those people to vote, like, for sure, but I still think it's very challenging.
Well,
and I think it'll continue to be. Sorry, go ahead.
No, let's bring it back around. Is there if social media leads to a third political party or more, is there a danger of social media actually diffusing the American political system? I mean, already everyone has their own blog, it seems. What if everyone wants to form their own political party as well?
Well, I mean, I think that there's definitely some of that, and I think that this is not a next election kind of thing that's going to happen that quickly. I think the groundwork has been laid for in the next 20 years that everybody's going to be registered as a client to state, and that's a crisis for our system. Simultaneously, the costs of organizing have changed, very significantly, and you can contemplate building a different party structure, especially when you consider the way like the federal and state governments are constructed. So, there's a lot of different things at play, like the census and redistricting and all these different things that, do vary state by state in many respects. Nonetheless, I think that social media does have a sort of approach of diffusing power. I'm not sure that it's about everybody, having their own blog or starting their own party, but it just creates the potential for people to do things that they could never do before. I mean, the example that Clay Shirky uses in Here Comes Everybody, or Everyone, I always get it wrong, is, he talks about how, the Catholic Church, could never really be taken on before because it was impossible to organize or reach anybody. Mm-hmm. And now, it's people, victims groups have organized, all over the place with great, ease and efficacy. And there's, a million other examples like the Berlin Wall that he also uses that I think, are things that couldn't have been taken on before. And I think that the challenge, both parties have really had the support of both the system and the money and the government, but like with Murder Voter, they kind of screwed it up because what happens is that people now only register to vote once. So they register to vote once and they just transfer the registration if they move, which is a different sort of thing, than it was before, even psychologically. And the impact, will be that we don't have parties that have that as many members as people that aren't in parties. So I think that there is space for people to move in, especially at the local level. And I'm not in favor of it. It's not even like I encourage that. I actually I'm a really proper Democrat. I just actually sort of acknowledging that I think that that's what the trend means, and that what's happening online and the opportunities to organize and communicate mean that you can take on structures that you could have never contemplated taking on before.
Okay. Well, let's go to the phones. Hi, do you have a comment or question for Sarah?
Yeah, I just had a sort of a combination comment question. My name is Matthew Oliphant. So I saw Sarah's update on Twitter, so I thought I would listen in.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So, I got to thinking about social media and politics and some of the aspects of current communities that are online where you can discuss topics and rate things. And I'm just wondering if we'll ever get to the point where senators proactively do a version of hot or not on their bill. Or how you have ratemyprofessor.com or ratemyteacher.com will we come up with ratemysenator.com, where then we can give feedback directly to these people on the job that they're doing, and hopefully people would give rationale behind that, and it wouldn't just be I'll give you 3 stars because you're bringing money to my district kind of thing. But
Sarah, you go ahead and answer this while I go register.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question.
Yeah, too late. I already registered.
Wait, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I already registered it, and no, just kidding.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question because I think people, do have different sets of opportunities to express themselves. I'm sorry, can you reword that? I lost track based on not understanding what you were talking about re-registering.
Oh, which part?
Just the very beginning. I'm so sorry. I completely.
No. I was just,
Oh, rate my senator. Got you. Hot or not, Bill. Okay. So two things. One, because I have two directions to go. This one is that I really hope that we do have more feedback to our public officials. I think that that's a great opportunity from their YouTube channels. I think that's a great step in the right direction. However, I elect people because I want them to become experts on things. That's what representative democracy is about. I don't like initiatives. I don't think it's good for us. I think that it allows us to become legislators, and I don't actually think that that's actually healthy for democracy that is just not about majority rule. We protect rights and we just protect each other against discrimination through our laws because, that's better for us even if all of us might not agree with it. So I'm hesitant to have people, actually voting on bills for them to express themselves. Like that's, part of the greatest feature of American democracy is that people do that. They send letter campaigns and all that kind of thing. I'm not so sure how effective that stuff ever is, but the idea that it's more readily and easily accessible, is actually great. And I think that because there are challenges to the party structure to begin with, there are people, there are people who have to really be in touch with their constituents more than they had to before, which I think is really progressive.
Okay.
So sorry about that. I knew there was two things I wanted to say, and I got very lost on the I re-registered.
All right. Well, thanks.
Thanks for calling. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks very much, Matthew.
Bye.
Bye. I'm sorry that I caused a problem there because as he asked the question about rating your senator, I was trying to say, Sarah, you go ahead and answer this. I'm going to go register rateyoursenator.com.
Gotcha. That's funny. Okay, yeah, I just didn't hear you and got very confused that there's a question at the end. Anyway, moving swiftly along.
Will we see social media touch all politics in the future, or do you think? I think maybe you've answered this, but or was the Obama campaign the exception rather than the rule going forward?
I mean, I don't think people have a choice. I mean, I think especially because I really do think that we are going to change the way we communicate. And what Obama did that I thought was really one of my favorite things that Barack Obama did was that he asked people to submit their phone numbers to get a text message to have the VP nomination announced to them first, which is genius for a billion different reasons. But he got millions and millions of phone numbers of people's mobile phone numbers, which, nobody really ever had before, which meant on the night of for actually calling people to ask people to go get people to vote, he never had a better set of resources. And straightforwardly, the people that, that build campaigns are definitely just smart enough to realize the efficacy of that. So I think that they're definitely, people are going to move forward sharply. It's challenging though because as a person who's been involved with the party and who believes actually in the parties, they are different sets of institutions, and it's not the same thing as what people have organized online. And things are definitely structured in a way that perhaps is anathema to social media. I still think that nonetheless, there's no choice but for those things to change because they're going to have competition otherwise. It's too easy. And it's not that expensive. Someone, some sort of sharp young person with a bit of money could actually do it really easily, and that's the thing. And I don't think that there are people out there that don't realize that.
Do you think that Obama will be able to transfer his following, all those people who sent in their cell phone numbers or who contributed to his campaign online? Can he transfer that as a group to whitehouse.gov now that he's actually governing? I mean, there's a big difference between campaigning and governing, and as well, we see repeatedly with candidates. But this is different. I mean, he's got this following that he really wants to take with him. Is that going to happen?
I'm a believer. Like, I didn't think that Barack Obama could get elected, and I was a John Edwards supporter. Barack Obama definitely turned me into a believer. I'm so thrilled I was wrong. I think what Obama is incredibly good at, and I hope he continues to do this, is he's transforming a culture that has to be transformed from the sort of past decade of excess into a culture that, that's about me to a culture that's about us. Because the only sort of way that we actually can kind of overcome the challenges that we have in front of us is if we are working together. And I think that that's also sort of part of what social media enables. Like, we don't agree on everything. Nobody agrees on everything. But there are certain things that we can agree on and we can actually work together on. And I think with the way it looks like the economy's going, there really are going to have to be programs to help people. And I actually think that there really, in this election, this sort of stunned me, there was really a generational change. I went back home after the election to my little town in upstate New York, which is, a town that, like, when I was younger, definitely had people that said racist things, And the person that I associated with being the biggest racist in my town, and not necessarily the smartest person either, had voted for Barack Obama. And this young kid who was like a little brother of a friend of mine, he's Puerto Rican, he came up to me and he was like, I don't know what you people were thinking about Prop 8 in California. And, like, those are just things that 10 years ago wouldn't have happened. And even Republicans I've spoken with who are, like, recently sort of unemployed have different experiences of what the country needs to do about education and health care. So I think that, like, what I think is also happening, and I guess I should have identified this before, is that our minds are changing. Our sets of possibilities are changing because of the opportunities offered by, social media and the internet. And we're kind of growing up. Like, we elected Barack Obama. Like, nobody thought, I did not think that we had a country that was that significantly not racist enough to elect that man. And, like, I cannot be more thrilled that I was completely wrong. And I think what he has continued to do and what he's trying to do is to continue to ask us to participate, and not in a vague way. I mean, that's why he was such a good social media candidate. He was good enough to say, please send me $5 now, click here. And, like, straightforwardly, if you know to do that, you're going to be successful. If you write 10 pages and then ask for $5, you're not going to get anyone to respond. So, maybe Republicans and Democrats will learn, how to sort of use those tools. But I think that, I'm sort of encouraged already that, like, Obama, even before he was inaugurated, he encouraged people to celebrate a day of service. And his entire speech, which I actually also read about this, is most of the words in that speech are us and we. There's very few use of the words I or you, and I think he says I think he never says me. Mm-hmm. So it's just like the whole speech is not really devoted to much more than saying we have to do this together. Like, in us and the entire world, we have to actually get over it and, like, do some work and be reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Well, folks, if we've got a phone line open. If you'd like to talk to Sarah Szalavitz, the co-founder of 7 Robot and producer of the environmental video blog, Zaproot.com. Give us a call, 1-646-595-3135. You can also submit questions via the live web chat that always accompanies the Mr. Media interview on blogtalkradio.com. Okay, Sarah, we have talked about social media and politics because that is, of course, one of your many areas of expertise, but let's turn to another one. Let's talk about storytelling. Mm-hmm. Big radical content change here, folks. So if you came for the politics, stick around for the storytelling. We're going to change gears a little bit. When did you first realize that you had a knack for storytelling? That this was something you could do?
This is now the cute part of the interview. So I always loved telling stories. When I was the first story I remember telling apparently over and over again, and I'm not really sure why, although my sister says I may have witnessed the smoke of it, is that there was a garbage truck that caught fire on the George Washington Bridge and had made my father late coming home from work. So I seem to have told that over and over again. But then in kindergarten, I won the Best Storytelling Award. And basically been trying to live up to it ever since. But in my family, like, it was very much like storytelling was definitely, a part of the culture we had. My sister made little movies that we would write and direct and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, we talked about, politics at the dinner table, and I think learning how to, write and tell stories well was really, just valued in my family.
Now, you've produced a lot of online video storytelling. You did something. What am I trying to say? Folks, you can go to www.aliveinbaghdad.org and see some. And I have a little clip here from something you did a couple of years ago. This is a very brief clip from awkwardsexstories.com. So give a listen to this, folks.
I wasn't a big square, but obviously I had never been on my own. For this week in particular, it was like, oh, well, maybe this is who I am. You know, maybe I want to wear patchouli. So I go to this party. I don't know anybody there. But at the same time, it was kind of like, you know, I have to get drawn to, like, force myself to, like, no, this is who I am now. Like, I'm San Francisco. I live in the Upper Haight. Like, this is cool.
Dude, would you like some herb?
No thanks, I'm fat.
Bitchin'.
Hey, do you know Megan's here?
Who's got Megan?
Short hair, kind of cool, goes to San Francisco State with me.
It was like hacky sack central. It was like a bunch of white kids trying to be black, basically. Trying to be all like vibing, like that sort of thing. And I, of course, end up getting trashed, totally trashed.
Yeah. So we've made a giant leap here from politics and Barack Obama to awkward sex stories. And, of course, it took a few years in between the garbage truck story and the awkward sex stories, but tell us a little bit about that series, if you would.
Well, actually, that's one that I can't say so much about because we are sort of in negotiations with someone to actually make it. But basically, like you said, you got to see what is our pilot edition of something that we're planning on launching called Awkward Sex Stories, which is, you know, reenactments of people's real-life awkward sex stories. And so the sort of way that I've gone about making content typically online is I'm kind of precious about it. I alternate between like wanting a broad audience and a whisper campaign. Because I think, like, you know, with that kind of project, really the only way to get it done properly is to have, you know, a decent amount of financial support for it, because it's just like the way that we produce those episodes is not either cheap or it's not that it's difficult or that expensive. It's just more that it actually takes like doing things in different locations. It's not like shooting on a green screen in a studio, you know. So we've been pitching that project for a long time, and we love it, and hopefully we will have exciting announcements about it. But sort of my my feeling about that project and sort of the others is that what's happening in storytelling is that we're taking a different approach to storytelling than we did before. The things that are now valuable, instead of like telling someone something, is building a community around it. And so like what we like to say we're doing is transforming storytelling into story sharing. And we think that that's what the effective content of the future will be about. A lot of people talk about, and this is kind of a complicated question, a lot of people talk about how, great content, is king. I'm not so sure. It's not that I don't think that great content is great, because it is, but I've seen lots of great content that no one ever sees. And it's not for nothing that when people make a movie that they spend the same amount on the budget as they do on getting people to watch it. It's sort of just part of the whole thing. It's like, how do people sort stuff out? There's a lot of different, kinds of possibilities of how this could pan out. But, I really sort of, am a believer that the stories that will win out in the future are those that are told on different platforms and provide different opportunities for people to participate and share. And I'm not saying that people want choose your own adventure, or that they want the same thing all the time. Sometimes you just want to relax and, watch SVU. But I still think that providing people opportunities to be involved with something and make it a part of their life is the things that the future of successful entertainment will be.
I'm remembering, and I think it was late in the Clinton administration, that there was something called DEN, Digital Entertainment Network, that tried, and there have been several of these over the years that tried to produce video programming for the web. And I think the problem in the Clinton administration, and for those of you, again, a little young, it's 92 to 2000 basically, that's it was that the internet was not fast enough for most people to accommodate that. Now we seem to have overcome that. Obviously, YouTube and well, even one of your other shows, Zaproot, draws plenty of people and puts out a high quality video. But have we settled on a delivery format for video programming like this that everyone has agreed, okay, this is the way we present it. It's in 5-minute or 10-minute episodes, and it's at this quality. But was it still pretty much?
It's a bare playing field. Nobody knows what they're doing or how to survive it. There's plenty of talented people thinking about it and trying stuff. It's sort of my belief, and this is what the transforming storytelling into story sharing is about. It's my belief that nobody seems to think about what they do when they're online. They're not sitting in front of their computer with a laptop on with 12 windows open. The people's attentions are really divided, between multiple devices and multiple experiences that are happening at the same time. So I just think that, we have to find a way of being in multiple places and involving people. So I don't think it's just about what the format is and what length it is necessarily, because I think, I think that there will be different lengths for different reasons. I really don't think that people never want to see a movie again. I think the industry is certainly going to change. And how we experience it will, and it already has. I think that some of the most successful attempts that you see of this online are the things that really are cross-platform. Like ESPN has a lot of successful shows on the internet because they promote them on TV. So it's not. Similarly, I would say the Disney Channel has some stuff that does that kind of thing. And I think, I don't know. I still think it's going to be a very different experience because there's a lot of the business is very complicated and in a seriously difficult and precarious position financially. So I think, some people are taking very interesting approaches to build audiences that are more long-term. And I guess that's what I think the point is it's not about short-term viral videos. It's about building a community that is involved with those videos and actually, asks questions about them and shares them with other people because they are involved with them. And I guess I also think that, it's similarly with, advertising and brand integration, we have to do things that make sense. I produce a green show. We do our best to integrate green opportunities for products, and not in a way that undermines the editorialism or the tone of the show, in a way that makes sense to the people that are involved with it, And I'm not saying that you can do that. The green is a very specific opportunity, but I think that there's a lot of examples of where you can do things that make sense. The big example people use is the comparison between the brand value for Coca-Cola versus Ford and American Idol. Coca-Cola makes sense on American Idol. Maybe it doesn't make sense for Ford. What does Ford have to do with the singing competition? People are sitting and drinking a Coke. It makes sense. It's not illogical to see Coke there. But somehow, for people in the studies that they've done, it hasn't been so logical for Ford to be there. So I don't know. I just think it's if you're advertising to a particular segment and you do programming around it, you may want to. Those are the right opportunities for you, and not something that is the wrong demographic for you.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about speaking of. Tell me about Alive in Baghdad. I saw, and anyone can see this, it's on your LinkedIn page, but you indicate that Alive in Baghdad received 1 million views in 24 hours. How on earth do you accomplish that?
Well, that was actually not Alive in Baghdad. That was a viral video series that I've just spoken out against to support Alive in Baghdad. So what we did was, and it's actually really funny, it's one of the videos, one of the videos with the best views were the ones of Jessica, who's the star of Zaproot, taking a shower with a keyboard. What it was we were encouraging people to donate old equipment to Alive in Baghdad, so a bunch of video bloggers and I did a bunch of videos to support Alive in Baghdad. So the folks from Ask a Ninja and the folks from Invisible Engine, we just did, and Mickey Krimmel from Wikipedia. Who am I forgetting? I'm certain I'm forgetting somebody. I did made these videos for them, and we premiered them on the homepage of every website. It's actually really funny. I called a friend of mine because I wanted him to do some PR kind of stuff for us for the blogs, and I was like, so we're just going to put them on the cover of YouTube and MySpace and all these different sites, and he was like, no, you're not. And I was like, what do you mean, no, we're not? He's like, that's impossible. I'm like, yes, we are. Because I just asked everybody. Everybody wanted to support Alive in Baghdad because it was a charity project. It wasn't like putting a comedy video or a product video on the cover, of a site, and it was at the height of people's attention span for, the war. and we did it on the anniversary of the war, blah, blah, blah. And so it was actually a really successful campaign. We raised some money, and we raised a lot of awareness. I think it was more effective in awareness than in actual money, but we were offered some equipment that we could send, and it was actually a really fun experience. They have gotten actually a lot of views, but it's a challenging project because, it's obviously not a commercial project. Not everybody's that interested in hearing the perspective of the average Iraqi on their experience in Baghdad or elsewhere, because we do other spots as well.
Right.
Nonetheless, it's a very rewarding, and I think what it is doing is it's changing the model for media into one that's more participatory. And I think what Brian's done is really a tremendous, not only a tremendous accomplishment, but he's really changed the way that that we perceive media.
Well, I want to, you made reference to Zaproot, and I want to talk about that in a moment. But first, I want to play just a moment, about a minute from, I think this is the most recent episode of Zaproot. So if everyone kind of bear with us for a second, this is Zaproot.
This is Jessica Williamson, and you're watching Zaproot. The Winter X Games, the place where extreme snowboarders and EMTs come together in perfect harmony, also competes with itself to go green. Each year, the X Games tries to beat its prior efforts to keep waste from landfills. In 2006, over 70% of the event's waste was diverted from Aspen landfills. And this year, the nonprofit Global Inheritance is running the Trash Recycling Store, where you can trade in recycled bottles and cans for cool gear. But if that six-pack won't get you that skate deck you wanted, don't worry, because you can earn extra spending points by answering eco-quizzes. Even if you can't make it to the X Games, the Trash Store will be with you at events like Live Earth, the Warped Tour, Sundance, and Coachella. Eric Ritz, Executive Director of Global Inheritance, hopes to inspire environmental awareness in the next generation of consumers. So bring your cans and get free stuff. Unless, of course, you're this guy who's going to get something for free. On September...
Tell us a little bit about the idea behind Zaproot. I mean, it's basically environmental in focus, and you were saying a minute ago that you're not shy about looking for commercial opportunities as well.
Yeah, I mean, Zaproot came to be because I had met Damien Somerset, who had been a part of creating Tree Hugger TV and was editing Ask a Ninja at the time. And I met him, and I thought that he was really incredibly talented and very smart. And so at the same time, someone suggested that they wanted a green show, so I called Damien, and I had known Jessica, who's like a little sister to me, and she was looking for an opportunity to do, she's an actress and wanted to be doing something that might provide some opportunities for her as well, and she obviously feels strongly about the green space as well. And so we put together a pilot, and we got, a bunch of offers, and we accepted an offer for licensing from Next New Networks, which was great. Because it was a great moment in the market, we had the opportunity to continue to own our work, which was important to us. But still, it's really early on, and we're trying to build something that can be very valuable in many different spaces. And so we definitely aren't opposed to commercial opportunities. I don't think that let's put it this way, we're reasonable about it. We're probably not going to do a commercial for DuPont, who created Agent Orange, anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't work with somebody that that is making green practices, that is encouraging green practices. It just really depends on our sort of viewpoint on what they're doing and what their activities are, I suppose. But for the most part, it's we want something that would fit within the boundaries of the show creatively, as well as something that we think has integrity for our audience, which is a green audience. At the same time, it's a very early time in the market, so we're really lucky to work with Next New Networks, and we're excited about what the future might hold. At this point in storytelling, going back to that sort of particular question, things are changing that rapidly, and I think that there kind of never has been a better time. This is sort of the time in the 80s when CNN started and MTV started, and so I'm hoping that this is not necessarily what I'm interested in doing, but I'm hoping that somebody, really that someone on the creator side creates something that's that kind of roll-up opportunity for the creators themselves, and so that it's not just the studios that kind of take advantage of this crazy time and crazy amount of change. Someone's going to have to be creating entertainment, and I'm hoping that this barren moment that the creators can really come together. But back to Zaproot for one sort of second. I mean, I think
go ahead.
that, I think that there are, we're really encouraged because we think that obviously that the world is moving towards being a more sustainable place. So we're kind of committed to building something that has a community that has the same sort of sets of commitments. Like with Zaproot, we're not, we encourage people to do the best that they can. We're not about sort of judging people for not being perfect. And so, we don't, while we do make fun of things that are greenwashing, we don't make fun of people's efforts to become more green. And I think that that's kind of like what the boundaries we try to set are. We really want to encourage companies to do their best to become sustainable, especially in a time where it's so hard, when the economics of it are so difficult.
Well, what are the most important elements in digital storytelling? What is it that people who do it tend to miss?
What do the people that do it tend to miss, or the people that? Well, I'm sorry.
I guess it's two questions. I'm asking what are the most important elements in digital storytelling, and then there's a lot of people out there trying to produce video content for the internet who are just falling a little short. I guess what I'm wondering is what's missing.
Well, there's a couple things. It's funny. Someone was just asking me this the other day. I don't really think it's about creating content for the internet. I think it's about creating a great experience. And so I think it's not, great stuff needs to be everywhere. I mean, going back to the sort of idea of whether or not things have to be great, I think that things have to be accessible and great in order for them to really make an impact. But there's a lot of great things that I totally adore that really struggle. And there's a lot of terrible things that don't. So, it's a lot easier to renew The Biggest Loser than it is to renew Mad Men. And so, there's sort of a challenge to this idea that it is the great content that really prevails. I'm not so sure. It's the stuff that appeals to people that prevails, and that both prevails and is accessible to people. So, however, I do think that obviously there are people that are incredibly talented that do succeed. And I think that there's a lot of people in this space that have kind of proven those sort of sets of opportunities exist, that it's actually about being talented. So it's not about being talented, but it's also about being hardworking. And people like Felicia Day, she's an actress who has a series on the internet called The Guild, but she's also, she auditions for movies and TV and she books stuff, and, she's working really hard to be a person that's telling these kinds of stories. And I think, so she's also good. I mean, she's also really, really talented. And I'd say similarly, about the Ask It Inch guys, it's they work super hard. And they're doing something that is actually good and you can see where it can be on all these different platforms. And that's the kind of the stories that we try to, that Zaproot's trying to be. We're seeking to be, on TV and all those different places that you experience entertainment. And I think that those that's the stuff that I think can be the most successful. It's also the hardest because you have to be good at lots of different things. It's now really hard to just decide that I just want to direct or I just want to write. It's hard. I mean, for me, with Zaproot, the funnest part is actually, doing the writing and the creation of the story. The part that's work that they pay us for is to get people involved with it and watching it. And I'm not sort of saying that it's negative being involved with people and watching it. It's just, you enjoy different things more than others. And I definitely love interacting with people over it, and definitely Damien does a lot of it and more of it than I do. So I think it is really just completely changing the definition of what storytelling is. I think the storytelling is about the interacting on all these different platforms. And so, if you can't imagine it having a function as an iPhone application or on TV, then maybe your story is just something that might be a viral video, and that's fine. It's just sort of I'm more interested in something that has a more long-term impact and relationship with the people that, are involved with it, or the community that, that surrounds it.
Something you were just saying kind of stirred up something I was wondering about. You obviously have, based on your resume and all the things you've done, you have a ton of competing interests and things that you like to do. How do you keep on message day to day and hour to hour?
It's a very good and difficult question. I think that right now is a very complicated time, both for my business and everybody's business. I feel really blessed that I've been working, that our company, that we have a tiny company and have been working independently for this period of time, because I feel very prepared for, the difficulties that are happening in the economy. And I feel comfortable working independently. And for people that have spent a lot of their lives working at a big company, it's very challenging to understand how to work this way, without the sort of same sets of resources that you can get, at those sorts of places. So that's, that's kind of good. And I think that like all the things I'm interested in are generally about storytelling. The politics stuff is really, is really a recreational sort of thing. I used to work in politics when I was younger, and I kind of determined that the best way to really be impactful, in this kind of way is to actually wind up making some money. So I've recently decided that I need to try to do that. In terms of like, the storytelling versus the social media piece of it, the economics of storytelling are very challenging, and I view that as more of a fun part of my job rather than the part I really get paid for. And so like, I think like what we're doing in our social media projects is, we're seeking, in the community building projects we have for brands, networks, and studios, we're seeking to support, the franchises like Zaproot that we're building. And I think, it's challenging. We're presented suddenly with a lot of different sets of competing opportunities right now. And it's hard to figure out what you really want to spend your time on when the world looks very uncertain. And I kind of realized that, like, I was talking to a friend of mine about the structure of Seven Robot as, like, as a social design agency and what that meant about these sort of sets of opportunities. And he was very helpful. He basically said that, like, these kinds of agencies are set up so that you get to explore these opportunities. And, like, then, if you don't want those opportunities, even if they're big, bad, and exciting, you're able to pass them off because you still have the agency that you started. And that was so it was really nice. It was actually sort of very encouraging that, like, in this uncertain time, like, you really just have to, like, continue to look and to put together ideas. And I really do believe that this year anything is possible. Like, these large media companies are really, have a hard time, and it means that other companies can really rise up, especially people that know how to operate in a different way, that's made possible by social media, but is informed by the experiences of other, of media history and other sorts of storytelling.
I suspect you're very right there. I don't think people's interest in reading or following their local or national news is going away. I think it's just a matter of the distribution system changing, and we've all got to adapt to that.
Yeah, I want to bail out the newspapers, though. I just honestly, like, I feel like here's the deal. I don't want news to be for profit. I really don't. I actually just think, like, otherwise I'm just going to be reading about Britney, and as much as I love Britney, I want to read about, I want to have to read about the things that are actually important issues. And, if the New York Times falls apart or any of these other companies, New York Times looks like it's okay, but, like, any of the other companies, this is a public good, people. Like, it's good to know what's going on. I'm not saying you have to print, but we got to do something so that we keep journalists we keep people, being paid in a way that suggests ethics and integrity. I don't know. I'm very worried about it. Like, I think it's a really important problem. I should have done that issue on my Change.gov, and I would have won. But seriously, like, I think it really is a concern of mine. I mean, my sister's a journalist, and I think it's not. I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about us. Like, she's a great writer, and great writers, honestly, like, I feel less worried about writers in many ways than many other people, and this is the reason, is that writers work alone already, so they already know how to do that. But the other thing is that good writing is very difficult to come by, and it's very valuable, because expression is never, is really at a premium. People that can express themselves through Twitter well, it's a skill of being able to figure out what to say in those kinds of ways. And I'm not saying that, like, someone that's been writing screenplays for years is suddenly going to write Twitters for a living. But what I am saying is that there is a great value in expression that's not going anywhere. And I don't know. I think I keep seeing all these sort of reviews from CES about, how everything's going to be video everywhere. I think that's annoying. Like, sometimes, like, I'm not looking for video. I'm looking to find out a piece of information really quickly. I don't need a video of the weather report. Maybe I'll have it on CNN in the background. But if I'm looking for weather.com, I just want to read it because it takes less time. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be all of everything. That's not the point. The point is actually involving people in storytelling. I mean, in the experience, and in what they're looking for. Sorry.
I think it's all going to evolve. I think a lot of the daily newspapers, as we know them, will go away, but the organizations behind them will find ways to distribute what they have. It's just the operation of the newspaper business, as we know it, is very top heavy, and it's huge overhead. And without the advertising, it can't be supported. And they're all realizing that. I mean, and, the New York Times has so much debt. They're They're very nervous. More local. It's odd. You would have thought 5 years ago that national news publishers like the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and USA Today and things like that would be least impacted in the situation, and local newspapers would be the opposite. I actually think the local newspapers, the smaller community papers, will have a better chance of lasting through the storm than the bigger ones.
Oh, I totally agree, because you can local advertising is valuable.
Yeah.
I also feel like this is a challenge, though, for the newspapers, full stop. I mean, for everybody in the media business. Is like the dynamic change that's happening, and this underlies intellectual property and like everything else, is that before you could control copying and distribution, and now that's over. And that really screws up everything for every media company. I mean, it's what's killed the publishing industry prior to the newspapers in terms of the book industry. Like now, and that's why I'm more worried for the newspapers than anything else, is because I care about entertainment in a different kind of way. I think that having a press, an unbiased press, has a very different, sort of sets of values. I mean, I feel bad for, the people at Warner Brothers that are being laid off and that kind of thing, but it's the public good of having a newspaper. And I mean, I suppose, like, you have the example of the BBC as something that, like, that's why that's public. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I remain quite concerned, because I think that, otherwise, if it really is driven by ad sales online as well, you're not going to wind up, employing the people that, that write about Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sarah, we have about come to the end of our hour. I want to let people know that they can check out at least some of your work at www.zaproot.com. It's Z as in zebra, APROOT.com. Anywhere else you want to send folks?
I think that sounds. Oh, you can check me out on Twitter at Dear Sarah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
And I did post that in the web chat, so that's there.
Sarah, one more place. Actually,
yes.
Lots of things I'm talking about are on my blog, which is dearsarah.typepad.com.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us on Mr. Media today. It was a lot of fun, and you lived up to your billing. Well done.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure. I really appreciate you inviting me.
My pleasure. And have an interesting year, and come back and talk to us again soon.
Definitely. I look forward to meeting you somewhere in person, I hope, too.
That would be nice. Sarah, thanks so much.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And, of course, for more great interviews, surf over to our main website, www.mrmedia.com, where you can listen to my earlier conversations with everyone from Kirk Douglas and Billy Bob Thornton to Guy Kawasaki and Renee Seiler and even Kyle Bornheimer, the star of the CBS show Worst Week. That was a favorite of mine. Please think about writing an online review of Mr. Media, casting a vote for Mr. Media, or marking Mr. Media as one of your favorites, whether you listen on Blog Talk Radio, Pointer Online, Digital Journal, Podcast Pickle, Vox, Folio, Mediafly, Podfeed.net, Blueberry, Zencast, or Odeo. You can also subscribe to Mr. Media on iTunes, and then you'll never miss a show. Just search Mr. Media Interviews from within iTunes and subscribe for free. You can also listen with a piece of string and a tin can in many locations. If you've got an idea for a guest, email me directly at bob@andelman, ANDELMAN.com. You can finally you can follow me on Facebook or on Twitter, www.twitter.com/Andelman. Thanks so much for joining us today. I always appreciate when you give up a little piece of your day to spend it with us. Come back real soon, everybody. Bye-bye.